Welcome to the Wimbo Worldwide F1 podcast, episode 14. And today's guest is living in the US. He has almost 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. His content is very informative. He does deep dives on every upgrade that every team brings. He does race reviews. He does prediction videos. And I'm a big fan of his work. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to F1 Unchained.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for having me, my friend.
So, Mickey, how's it going?
It's going good. It's going good. Today's a pretty chillax day. Me and you both talked about it. Pretty relaxing day for the both of us.
Yeah, it's always nice on a Friday to relax a bit after a long week of working. Although you probably still do a bit of work in the weekend on your content, or?
I try to. Yeah, I have a video that's going to be coming out tomorrow, so I definitely, especially on race weekends, that's when I'm working a lot more on the channel. But even when it's not a race weekend, I have a video prepped for typically Saturday, unless there's a lot of breaking news coming out.
Yeah, and you're probably thinking 24/7 about content.
Yeah.
Every bit of news that comes out, you're storing it for possible videos. Well,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's what I do anyway.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it a lot of the time, looking through
You're not very
Google.
active. You only have a handful of followers.
Yeah, it's not my favorite platform to use. I'm going to be honest, I'm not the best at tweeting. I'm not like, when I'm watching the race, I have to be engaged to know what I'm going to make after the race. So I watch it in very strict manner, I think I would say. Like, I have to watch every single lap the same way. I'm not watching it bored or on my phone, so I can't tweet during the race unless something like a huge safety car happens and maybe I can tweet something. But it's not the platform that I usually gravitate towards. I do want to get better at using it, though.
Hey, and do you use multi-viewer for F1 as well to get all the single driver perspectives and data?
I've used it before. I think it's okay. I think it's good. But mainly I'll just watch on F1 TV. F1 TV kind of gives me everything anyways that I need. So yeah, if I'm going to pay for that huge subscription, I might as well use it correctly.
So, I monetized my Twitter account last month.
Oh, really?
I need to get 5 million impressions and more than 500 followers. And every million impressions, I get $9.
Oh, okay.
And it's costing me $11 a month. So
Yeah, I mean, that's X for you right now. I heard that the ad revenue on X is not that great, so.
no. So what I do these days is I have a few big accounts on notification. So whenever they post something, I try to leave a witty remark. And because it's on top of all the comments, it gets a lot of likes and a lot of impressions. And that way, I reached the 5 million. But
Nice.
no, I don't see myself making a living out of Twitter revenue.
Yeah, there's very few people that I think could achieve that right now, at least in the space that Elon Musk has X in.
Yeah. Let's get into the personal talk.
Sounds good.
How did you get into F1?
Through my dad. My dad watched F1 a long time ago. He was watching it when it was Senna versus Prost, and he pulled me into it. He convinced me to start watching it more, and I did watch it here and there. I would catch a few races, but that was during the 2014, 2015 era where Lewis was destroying everybody. Well, it was Lewis and Nico, but the Mercedes was so much stronger, and at the time, that didn't really appeal to me. And as we got to the 2017, 18, 19 seasons, that's when I started to like Formula a lot better. I liked Vettel a lot in the time, Alonso in the time, and I knew of Alonso from 2012 as well. So that's when I started to enjoy it more and follow it as thoroughly as I do now.
Yeah, so you touched on your father. Was that in your home country? Because you told me that you're not from the US.
Well, I am born here, but
Yeah.
I'm Serbian. My whole family lives in Serbia. I have like one cousin here, but and my family ended up moving here, I think, in like 1992, somewhere around that time span. I can't really remember the exact year, but they moved here around that time period, and then I've been here in America born, so that's why I speak really well, but I can also speak Serbian fluently.
Okay.
And he ended up...
Yeah.
Sorry, he ended up showing me Formula One. I think it was mainly like he started talking to me about it maybe about like 6-7 years ago, about how much he used to love it before. He still catches it here and there. He'll watch all of my videos, but he likes watching it here and there. He'll pick and choose the races that he watches.
Okay, yeah. My dad is 77, and he watches the start, hoping for a crash.
That's what my dad does too. So.
And then he flicks it on just before the finish, and then he says, "Oh, that was a boring race."
Yep.
And then the next day he knows everything from the articles he reads.
Yeah, that's pretty much my dad in a nutshell too. He'll turn on the start, he might fall asleep during the middle, and then wake up for the end and give his opinion on it.
Yeah, a very unwavered opinion.
Yeah, but he knows his stuff though. Like he's very he follows it very well. First of all, from my channel, but also like from what he reads as well. So he's very caught up on who's doing best, who can really compete with Max, and so on. He always gives his opinion. It's a very valid opinion 99% of the time. So
would you say it's hard in the US to get addicted to F1 with all the other motorsports that is bigger?
Yes, I do think. I think it's mainly hard because the only subscription you really have is F1 TV. So, and it's a $70 subscription in a year. I think I read somewhere that like in the UK or even in Europe in general, it's way less than $70, but here it's $70 in a year.
No,
and,
it's actually it's 95 euros here, and that's more than 70. But I mean, I don't think that's expensive. Like a Netflix.
True, when you look at it that way. Agreed. When you look at it that way, it's not too bad.
That's $15 a month or 20.
True. That is much more expensive now that I think about it, but I just don't think it's as accessible. Like you do have something like ESPN Plus will sometimes put on races. I saw an ad from, I think it was from Monaco to like Silverstone. They were gonna like allow you to watch races, but then they won't play like another like 5 or 6. So to really keep up with the season, it's tough unless you have F1 TV.
In the UK, there's a thing where Sky Sports is the main provider, and F1 TV is blocked in the UK. So people need to use VPNs and all kinds of tricks to F1 TV.
I've heard about that. Yeah, I've heard about that. I don't really catch too many Sky Sports things. I've caught it here and there, but that's mainly through.
I always put the commentary on. I love Brundle and Crofty.
Yeah, they're great. They're amazing.
And then I get annoyed with Ted Kravitz, but that's part of the game as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, he's got some interesting takes sometimes, especially when it's on British drivers.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm biased towards Dutch drivers, so I can't say too much.
I mean, I get it though. Like, if I was born in those countries, I would be biased towards those drivers as well, and towards that type of media. So I understand like where people come from when Ted Kravitz is reporting on Lewis Hamilton. So it doesn't necessarily like annoy me, or if you're covering Max, like I can understand why you love those drivers. It's the same reason why I love Novak Djokovic as like a tennis player. I think he's the best for that reason. I definitely some bias there, but I get it. That definitely, if it's within the country. For me, I have Logan, who's in Formula One, but Logan's not my favorite driver, and I don't feel any bias towards him. So I love all the drivers pretty much.
Yeah. So you don't have a favorite? Because that was my next question, actually.
I do have a favorite.
Can I guess?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, from the content that I watched, I think you have the biggest feelings for Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, Fernando is something about his personality, but also the way he is as a driver makes me gravitate a bit more towards him. I can still have my criticism towards him, and I understand why some people might not like him, but to not respect him as a driver to me is absolutely insane. I think he's, if not the most talented driver that I've watched, like at least in recent time. It's just insane watching him. I feel so happy watching him, and when he's succeeding, like when he got that podium in 2023 in Bahrain, that was to me like a dream come true, even though it was just a podium, but it felt like the car was there. He got a podium in 2021 as well, but that was more luck based than it was really the car being there. And I was super happy. Now this season, obviously it's a different story, but yes, he's my favorite, but I have a lot of other drivers I like too.
In 2023, he could have won in Monaco if they put on the, what was it?
The intermediates.
Yeah, he didn't go to intermediates.
Yeah, it was, I mean, yet again, I can see where the team is coming from. They were 20 seconds behind Max. And Max in that lap was really slow because of all the water that was coming out, and they didn't pit him the lap before, so they had the chance, but it's a risk. You either take, what if they were the right choice? What if the mediums were the right choice in that moment? So I get it. It's frustrating, but I can understand their thinking. And I think Alonso did in that time as well. But yes, that would have been a victory, and that would have been the lucky number 33.
No, I noticed it because I think you have a little bit more Fernando Alonso merch.
A little bit, yeah.
You like Aston Martin. They're always pretty prominent in your videos. I noticed, but I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, I mean, I think mainly because they've been having a lot of upgrades this year. I did cover a little bit more Aston Martin stuff, like when I first started, because that was the team that I followed. I also liked Vettel. Like, Vettel is also one of my favorite drivers of all time. I think as the years went on, I realized why I liked Alonso better than Vettel, but he's one of those drivers that I'll always still look back at and enjoyed his time in Formula One, especially in that 2017 and 18 era. Like, I was always wanting him to win over Lewis, so even though he didn't. But.
No, he didn't. Yeah, well, I was a little different. I was a Max fan, and he was always battling the Ferraris more than the Mercedes because they were too quick. And there's been quite a few incidents with Vettel, and he was always moaning to Charlie.
Oh yeah, I mean both of them tended to moan their fair amount, but I when it comes to Max, that's a driver that I love more and more as I watch him more and more. He's just such a good driver, and he's very direct, and I like that in an athlete. He says what's on his mind. I wouldn't say he's PR trained all the time. Like, he says what's on his mind and what he feels. I like that about him. He also drives, I think, in the most aggressive way when he needed to. When he drove those Red Bulls, that's how I wish every other driver would drive, in a way that you want to always win instead of going for the P2 or a P3.
No, I couldn't agree more. Like, I made a video a couple of months ago about how the pressure from the media made Max Verstappen boring. Because he livened up the place so much in the Mercedes dominant days by
absolutely.
He'd rather ruin his tires and finish fifth than let somebody go by and finish fourth. You know, that's the sort of spirit he had. Nico Rosberg still has nightmares of the time he had to overtake him for his championship.
It just shows you.
And in those days, since those days, many rookies have come. And none of them have displayed that sort of courage to fight with a world champion. Just even Piastri nowadays, you know, he doesn't get out of the way of a fight, but then he's pretty calm about it all. And you know, I've never seen Piastri make a super aggressive move like Verstappen did in those days.
No, agreed. And a lot of people get at him for making some of those moves, but I thought if you don't have the best cars, sometimes that's the only move you can make. And so while it isn't the cleanest move, people as F1 fans, we're all competitive for all our teams and drivers. If we were to be in those seats, wouldn't that be your goal, to make that overtake? And if anybody that drives in the games or does the simulators, that's how everybody drives. They drive like Max. They go for the crazy overtakes. They try to get first place because at the end of the day, that's what matters. Now, in Formula One, obviously, each team gets a certain amount of prize money, and same with the drivers. So maybe there's more at stake there, and their livelihood, obviously, it's a dangerous sport that at it. So going for difficult moves could cost you your life, and that's something that nobody can experience except for the drivers.
Yeah.
But I've always loved his... I mean, even what he said when he crashed in Monaco the first time, he was like, I'm glad I crashed because now I know how it feels to crash, so I can keep going for more.
I remember that as well. Like, Romain Grosjean just stepped on the brake 20 meters earlier than he did all the laps before.
Yep. But I just like that mentality. He's got him and Fernando. That's kind of why I like the two of them in that way. They always think about to win. I think Fernando, now that he's older, he's a little more calm than he used to be. For Piastri, I do agree. I don't think he's as aggressive as Max, but on the first lap, though, the amount of moves he makes is quite impressive. He goes for pretty big lunges. His tire game is not that great right now, though.
No, that's his problem.
Yeah, but I mean, Max had that same problem in the beginning up until he learned how to manage, and now I would say he's probably the best at managing tires, so...
Yeah, well, it also has something to do with the car, obviously. Like in 2020, the Red Bull team thought more of the car than it actually was, because Max made the car look so good. And it set them in the wrong direction. But yeah, enough about Max, because we'll probably talk enough about him if you leave it up to me.
I love Max, yeah.
Let's do a little bit about content creation.
Okay.
When did you start making YouTube videos?
I mean, if I go back to like some other past channels that I had, it's been like 5 years. But that's never taken seriously. If I'm talking about serious, it's been a year and a half on this channel.
Yeah, but the simple things like writing a video and making an intro and all that stuff, you done that in the 5 years, in the years before you had this YouTube channel, or?
Well, to be fair, when I started this YouTube channel, though, I was editing everything on my phone. It wasn't anything on the computer. It was all on my phone for the first long time, actually, literally up until, I want to say it was after the summer break in 2023. That's when I started editing on Adobe Premiere, and my videos got so much better, and I bought a actual good mic now that I can use, and just upgraded everything in quality, because I first wanted to see if I can do it and if I can make it successful, and I think I have. So now it was a good choice to buy these investments and go along with it. But yeah, so I was super new, and I still am super new to Adobe Premiere. I think I can get so much better, and both in the thumbnails, I don't necessarily write all my videos. I mentally think for a lot of my videos, and then I'll maybe put like a couple of bullet points that I can go off of. I think about Formula One all day, so I don't really need to write about it too much. I have so much of it stored up that when I have a video idea, I just take my time on it.
Yeah, well, I edit with DaVinci Resolve.
Yeah, you told me.
And I need to script, because English is my second language, and I'm practicing my presenting skills with these podcasts and my live streams. But there's plenty of ums and silences and me looking for words. So I can't do that for a video. So I'd rather script it out.
Yeah,
but that's just a choice,
Oh yeah, no, I understand that, and it makes your video. It probably makes it easier for you to edit as well, like with less pauses and so on, if you do have it scripted out.
Yeah, well, I need to do a lot of lines twice or 3 times, and especially the talking head bits, I need to look into the camera and try to repeat it without reading.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, it's the same thing for me. It's natural within a space where you're recording a video and it's not live. When it's live, then it's different, but...
Yeah. So how long did it take you to get monetized? Get the 1,000 subscribers and the 4,000 watch hours?
I think it took me... So, I mean, my beginning channel content, I'm not too huge on, but I was learning what I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted to do, but I was getting inspired off people like Tomo and Aldous, and even from the race, and I needed to find my own lane. I think I made a video on Mercedes, and that video propelled me a lot in subscribers and was getting me closer to that number. It took me, I think, 4.5 months to get monetized.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it was, I ended up figuring out like what my content wanted to be. And then when I figured it out, and I figured out a couple of series ideas and what I want to make throughout the week, that's when my channel ended up doing a lot better. It was finding something that people would come back to. And that's, I mean, also people just liking the content. Like, I ask for subscribers, but they come, they give me the subscribers, and they like the video and comment. So, I mean, I'm thankful for anybody from any time and any point that's been able to support the channel, because it's ridiculous the amount of numbers that I have. So,
yeah, well, I'm talking to YouTubers with 100,000 subscribers, 130,000. FP1 will,
yeah,
and it's never enough,
Yeah, that's the name of the game.
I remember when I had 300 subscribers and I saw an account with 1,500 subscribers. I thought, oh, everything's going to be so much different once I have 1,500 subscribers. And now I'm going towards 2,000 and it's still nothing,
Yeah, I mean, but that's a good thing. You got to be hungry for it, kind of like Formula One drivers. So you got to always want to move up and move up. I mean, the inspiration should be to be where the race is at. You know what I mean?
No, definitely. And do you have a certain goal with your channel?
Yeah, I mean, I started this year with 50,000. I thought, okay, if I can hit 50,000 by the end of the year, that would be huge for me. And I'm probably, I hope I hit it by the end of June. I would like to get it 100K. My ultimate goal would be to get 1 million subscribers. So if I can, if I can hit that, then I'll be very happy. I'll be very happy to hit 100,000. But if 1 million comes around for the amount of time that I want to put into this and effort, then I'll be very happy.
Do you think there's enough people in our niche, or do you say niche or niche?
I say niche, but I think both
I think the
words
English
use.
say niche.
Maybe. I think both words actually work, but I think it's going to keep growing. Like if it continues like 2024 where it's competitive, and I think Lewis also going to Ferrari is going to bring a lot of people back in as well.
Yeah,
I think it's a sport that's
content.
going to keep growing. I still see, we talked about with the US how it's hard for people to get Formula One here, but I've seen more people with merch, and whether they wear a Red Bull shirt or a Ferrari shirt, I've seen it much more often than I used to. Like before, that used to be, you see that like once in a blue moon. But now I can see you walking down my street, somebody might be wearing some merch on a race weekend, for example. And I think that's much better, and I think it's going to continue to grow, especially with a bigger American audience. I hope they don't have like 50 Grand Prix now in America, but I do think that it's growing because of like Las Vegas, for example.
But that's pretty hopeful then, because my goal is to have like the best feeling I get is when somebody comments, "Oh my God, your channel is so underrated. I love your content, man. I subscribed."
Oh yeah,
absolutely. Those just make my day. And I'm hoping to do live streams with a couple of hundred people in there with familiar names, the ones that you see nearly every live stream. The community is actually my goal. And whether that's with 5,000 subscribers or 10 or 15, I'm not going to put a number on that. But do you do live streams?
Not yet.
No.
This is like my first podcast that I'm doing as well with you.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's my first time, I think, speaking live like this and talking for a longer period of time. I would like to do live streams. I'm not sure whether I want to do that on Formula One yet, because my videos take up so much time and I have so many ideas. If I was to live stream it, I think I'd blur out a little bit more than I wanted to, like for these videos where I can make them kind of into episodes. I do want to do it eventually, though. I like what Matt and Tommy do. Like, I like the way they speak. They speak really well, and I mean, Law of Yes pretty much feels like a podcast with how long he speaks in his videos and so on.
Yeah.
So
he puts it on Spotify as well as a podcast.
Yeah,
every video he makes.
No, yeah, he's killing it when it comes to just being able to speak about the sport for such a long period of time and have very valid takes. So
he does, but I know a little bit more about like he has another really successful channel where he voices a cartoon character from
Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
I've seen all of like Law's stuff. Like Law was one of the first people to comment under my channel, and me and him pretty much started around the same time. He also went through something with YouTube. I went through something with YouTube as well. So it was like almost in the same time, and we've been growing at that like same rate. And he does something different. I do something different. No, I love the guy. He's great at what he does, and salute to him for how good he's doing.
Yeah, and he's a lovely fella as well, which is important. I sometimes read back my own tweets where I got into feisty discussions about Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, and yeah, I need to get rid of that side of me, you know, the partisan side of me. But yeah, on the other hand, like, it probably gained me a lot of subscribers as well, you know, like maybe my niche within the Formula One niche is to be pro Max Verstappen and anti Lewis Hamilton. But yeah, I think for overall growth, I need to tone it down a bit, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, there's a space for both of it. I think there's so many Max Verstappen fans. There's also so many Lewis Hamilton fans. So you can have a space in Formula One being a Max fan. I mean, I don't know anybody else on Formula One that's as big of a Max fan as you are. And I don't think he gets defended enough, at least in videos. I think it's easy to target him with what he says in the media because he is so direct. So a lot of videos are almost made against him rather than with him, which I do find that annoying because I think, if anything, he's a great representative of the Formula One sport. But I'm definitely not anti-Lewis Hamilton. I love Lewis as well. I do like Max a bit better, but I like Lewis a lot too.
Well, see, he was my, like, I started defending Max Verstappen on Twitter and other social media.
Mm-hmm.
And with me watching all these British channels and content, the narrative was always against Verstappen. And then it was always pro Mercedes, pro Hamilton. So I felt compelled to make a channel and argue against that, or, you know, make pro Verstappen content. But what I've learned is that you can't defend a driver or especially a team 100%, because if you watch F1 long enough, they all disappoint you, and every team surprises you sometimes, you know?
100%.
So at the minute, my rating for Red Bull has gone down so much thanks to Christian Horner and his antics.
Yeah.
And with Mercedes being the underdogs now in P4, I'm starting to like them a lot more as well, especially if they hire Kimi Antonelli for that second seat.
Yeah,
that would make me a Mercedes fan.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I've always liked the underdogs, especially in Formula One. I think that's why I liked Vettel better than Hamilton in the time that he was in the Ferrari. I mean, I also liked him in the in his Red Bull era as well. I've always liked the underdog, whether that be in Formula One, that be in basketball, football, whatever it may be. I've always liked the underdog because they always have a chip on their shoulder. That's what I liked about Max. He was that guy. But that's what I also liked about Lewis when he was in McLaren. I thought before he's too PR trained for now. He says the right things at the right time. And I liked when he was more blunt about things, and he was making dive bombs from crazy, like places you don't see overtakes happen. He was able to make it happen because of his late braking style. So I liked that era of Lewis Hamilton. I still like him now. I don't like when he complains about the front wing and so on. But I like him as a driver, and I do like him as a personality as well. I think he's, if not one of the best drivers of all time. So I have to respect the driver regardless, even though he's a different style to something like Max.
Well, my problem is that sometimes I start to appreciate him again, and, you know, he says all the right things and I like him again, and then all of a sudden he does something, or he says something, and he's trying to play mind games with his teammate or against Max or whatever, and I'm thinking, you know, why? You know, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Because, yeah, it's just, he's saying things for his fan base. It doesn't even have to be true. And it reminds me sometimes of a certain former US president that we used to have that, you know, can say certain things just to please his own fan base. And the rest of the world knows that it's complete and utter bullshit.
Yeah, I can definitely see that for Lewis. I can understand why he kind of feels the way that he feels. Like, for the position he's in, I think he's the best driver to be in that position, because what did happen to him in 2021, at least in Abu Dhabi, like any other driver to be in that position would be, I think, in a very, very sad state of mind. And I think he handled that with class, regardless of like how it happened. While I do believe Max deserved to win that year, not in that fashion though. Like it was a cool last lap, and it's gonna be a moment that we all remember. But I get why Lewis is mad. And then to not have the car to compete with him, even though I do think he can compete with Max, and that's when Formula One's at its best, when there's that competitive rivalry. Even though Max says he loves winning by 30 seconds, there is a part of him, like you saw in Imola, when he wins by like not even a second, that he's just pumped. And I think he felt that adrenaline rush in 2021 so much, and Lewis pretty much the other way around. He felt it, and then losing at the end, he was probably so hungry to come into 2022 to have a mediocre car and not be able to fight. So I think that's why we see I would say it's a weird side of him, honestly. I've never really seen him complain so much about the upgrades on the car or his teammate beating him, or it's not the normal Lewis that I know, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, that's because we always seen him winning and beating his teammate.
That's true too, though.
Comfortably. And like, it's his fan base that probably doesn't want to believe that there's drivers better than him, and he doesn't want to believe it himself. So to please them, he gives them a hint of an excuse. It's like, oh, I didn't have the new wing yet, or oh, I don't know what's happening. Every time I finish free practice, I'm the fastest, and then as soon as qualifying starts, my car is 3/10 slower. And that's enough for his fan base to go off on one.
Yeah, I think people are getting now that it's happening too much for it to be a case of like, oh, this is Mercedes trying to sabotage him. I mean, if you look at Twitter, you look at any fan base, like you look at like Leclerc's fan base, or you look at like the very diehard fans that won't take any type of criticism for their driver. They say outrageous things. I can't even believe that people feel that way about certain drivers, and they'll say the things that they say, because at the end of the day, you have to respect what these people do. It's not, they're giving up their lives in this sport. It's a sport where you make the wrong type of crash, you could die, even with the amount of safety there is. So you have to like every single one of them at least a little bit, and give them the smallest amount of respect, at least, even if you don't like them as a personality. I feel that way.
I respect them because their lifestyle is very, very intrusive to having a normal lifestyle.
Agreed.
They spend half their racing life in planes, waiting in airports, talking to media, answering the same freaking questions every 5 minutes. They have to do commercials, promoting products, talking to fans. If you get seen once rejecting signing an autograph, immediately you're an arrogant prick. So no, I don't envy them. You know, like if I go on vacation, I'm always glad to put my bags down in the hotel, and you know, even if it's a 4-hour flight, you know, a traveling day is costing you 12 hours, and
right.
I'm always exhausted.
Agreed.
Now
Yeah,
most of these guys have their own plane, so it's probably a lot easier, but still, traveling is hard.
It is, yeah. I mean, with the amount of years that I've gone to Serbia, and it being a 12-hour flight, the day I get there, if not a day and a half, I'm pretty much screwed up because of the time zone difference and how tired I am. So
yeah, but those guys, you know, they have to climatize to everything, and then all of a sudden they need to perform as well under pressure.
Yeah, I remember actually, I think it was Lance talking about that when he had a flight one time and he came into a race. He came in with like 2 hours of sleep, and that was one of his best races that he had. So I find it funny when like you get a story like that, but then you have people like come there like a week and a half and prepare, and then they end up having a terrible race. So, but that's just how it is though with anything in life. But preparing is always best.
With Lance Stroll's driving style, I usually think he's still asleep behind the wheel.
Yeah.
You know, he's always turning in. It's like, oh my God, there's somebody there.
Yeah, there's a lot of... Unfortunately, he gets himself caught up into so many accidents that are caused by himself. but I think he's a good driver. I mean, like, I defend him in some cases because you see these awesome performances that you don't typically see from, like, if somebody's a bad driver, you never see them perform. Like, I feel like Latifi was never able to get that performance out. He had a couple of moments, but we didn't see, like, the pole in Turkey or the couple of podiums he's gotten. He can show himself off, but I think it's a matter of dedication to the sport. I think he just doesn't put the hours in. I could be wrong. I don't live in Lance's mind, but it just seems like something is missing there when it comes to the consistency.
It's probably the upbringing as well, you know. Everything came pretty easy to him. You know, his dad bought the best Formula 3 team, so he became a world champion there. And, you know, every time he needed an upgrade of a car, a new team was bought.
That's true too.
He has no pressure to stay in that seat because he's never going to get kicked out. And that's probably why he doesn't always take responsibility for his mistakes either.
Yeah.
Like when he bumped into Ricciardo, he said this idiot is stepping on his brakes.
Yeah. I don't know. That's where people don't end up liking him, when he makes a statement like that where he was clearly in the wrong. If he said sorry, nobody would have cared.
Yeah, but then if you compare it to Max Verstappen, like, I watch all the Dutch documentaries as well, you know, on Viaplay.
Mm-hmm.
And if young Max, when he was 14, if he was bragging a little bit about his driving, he's like, oh my God, I can't believe that I won seven races already. If I'm in Formula 1 later, then I'm going to win lots of races too. And then Jos said, well, if you keep driving the way you are now, you're not going to be in Formula 1. You're going to be a bus driver. because in turn 1, you didn't need to take that overtake. You could have waited. And I think that, you know, balanced him. Because, you know, if you let a kid get away with himself too much, then they become spoiled little brats.
Yeah, I mean, you can even see that Max liked that his dad was like that encouraged him to become what he is, the beast that he is. That is why he is so good, and that's why he goes for the race win rather than settling for the position that was maybe the more certain one. And I think that is the difference between some drivers. I feel like Lewis also has that chip on his shoulder when he's driving. Leclerc seems that way as well. There's a lot of these drivers, even Lando. Lando has a very easy upbringing, I think, as well, but Lando is also one of those drivers that drives with a chip on his shoulder. I think he needs to be a little bit more aggressive in comparison to the others, but he's much better than he used to be, at least in that case.
Yeah.
And you're right. It is the upbringing, definitely, for Lance. With it being too easy and with the crashes that he makes not being penalized, at least through the team, and the team defending him for every single crash that he makes. That's what I don't like about Aston. When Mike Crack goes on and says, oh, I mean, you could see that was obviously Daniel's fault. I mean, it wasn't. So, like, we can all clearly see that as well. I get it. They got to defend their driver, but they also have to take responsibility a little bit and say, Lance made a mistake. We'll make up for it in the next race.
Yeah, well, Mike Crack said recently that they do that behind closed doors.
I did read about that, and I was like, I hope they do. I do think they probably do settle some stuff down. I don't feel like it's all about Lance. Otherwise, he would just get every upgrade to the car and they'd leave Fernando in the dust. But, I mean, when you have such a good driver like Fernando next to you, hopefully he's learning a thing or two when it comes to driving that good and that consistent. Because when you see Fernando crash, we have seen a couple times this year. But, yes, he is also older. He's been in the sport for so many years. He's probably one of the drivers that I've seen crash the least amounts in our sport. And consistency has always been a thing with him, whether the car is bad or good. Another thing I appreciate about him is dedication to the sport.
Yeah, because, you know, that hard life that we just talked about, he's been doing that for 22 years or something.
Yep.
So, talking about races, have you ever been to a Formula 1 race?
I've only been to one, unfortunately. I mean, I was fortunate to go, thankfully. I ended up going last May to Miami, Miami awesome. 2023, and I ended up watching qualifying there and the race. It was a lot of fun. One of the best experiences I've had in my life, because that was the first time I ever got to hear a Formula car, like how it sounded like in person. It makes me quite sad that I've not been able to hear a V8 or a V10 or V12 in person, because that would probably sound insane in a Formula car. But still seeing the speed in person rather than on live television made me super happy, and I can't wait to go again. I hope to go to Texas this year if I can. I haven't bought a ticket yet, but
That's on
nice
my
to go.
wish list to go to Austin.
Hopefully we can meet up there then, because that would be an amazing race to see
Yeah,
with the elevation change and so on, because Miami's pretty flat.
They're gonna install a new kitchen this week, so I have no money. And
I mean, new kitchen's better though.
my channel's making $40 a month, so
It'll get
it's gonna
better.
be about a while before I can pay tickets to a race in the US. I did go to Austria last year, and that was great.
Yeah, you also told me that you went to the Dutch GP, obviously,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which one have you liked so far the most out of all of them you've been to?
I've been to Spa twice before that, but
Oh, wow. I want to see Spa really badly.
Max DNF twice there, so so that was in 2017 and 2019. But it's all great, you know. You just have to make the best out of it. Like you need to bring a good pair of shoes when you go to Spa, because the track is 7 kilometers. But if you walk around it, that's at least 12 kilometers to get from to the start again.
Right. It's such a huge track.
It's massive. Austria was awesome because it's on the hills, and like it felt like a home race because there's so many Dutch people there. And it's all in all, it's just a great atmosphere. You know, it's nothing like Twitter.
That's very true.
A European race is nothing like Twitter. And in Zandvoort, I kept approaching people in Mercedes gear. You know, couples and people, and they're like, "Where are you from?" And like, "Oh, we're from England. Are you having a good time here?" And they all said they had a great time in Zandvoort, and nobody was nasty to them at all. So
yeah, that's just the media trying to put out a story. When it was coming out, like, oh, the Dutch fans are not nice to the English fans.
I
that
suppose
are here from Mercedes.
you know, in the years that the Orange Army has grown so much, that it's quite intimidating and impressive to see such a vast group of people going to the track and sort of invading the whole circuit. Whereas years before that didn't happen. And then obviously the flares and too much drinking, so some of the women got harassed, and obviously the media made a big story out of it.
Yeah.
And then they forgot that, you know, on the camping sites in Silverstone a year earlier, fights broke out and somebody got stabbed. And like this year, what happened in Canada, that wasn't right either. You know, people invading the track and stealing the DRS sign. And
Yeah, I did see that.
Did you see the footage?
I saw the footage. It's like some chick taking down the DRS thing, right?
Yeah. And there was a lot of red flares in Italy, but for some reason, if the Tifosi does it, then it's okay.
Yeah, they pick and choose storylines. That's kind of why I don't really read too much into that, especially when it's coming from a certain outlet that doesn't like another outlet. So
Yeah.
I don't really follow much of the news anyways. It's not my favorite thing when it comes to like news in general. I'm not even talking about just Formula One when it comes to picking and choosing what's the right story, because there's always a middle ground somewhere.
So coming back to the races, if you could pick a race, even a historic or a circuit, which one would you pick? Which one would be your favorite to go to at some point?
It's tough. As I said, Spa is, I think, my favorite layout of a circuit. I think it doesn't get any better than that track, at least with the elevation change. You know what? It's Spa. Honestly, if there's any track that I want to see, it has to be that track, because I want to see how it looks like going into that crazy elevation change right in the beginning of the race with all the cars going through it. That would be insane. And then, as you said, hopefully walk around the track and see Sector 2 as well as Sector 3. It's the best layout of a track I've ever seen, for whether that be for Formula 1, GT racing. I enjoy it in every style. So I think that's the track that I'd most want to see. Austria is another one of those as well. I think Silverstone just for the history, because I've seen so many people go there and enjoy it. I did hear that it's like somewhere in the middle of nowhere, but I think that makes the race better, honestly. If it's like just that happening there, because Miami was very downtown. I did love it though. I did love it. Some people are saying they didn't have a great experience in Miami, but I don't know how you don't have a great experience. There's points in track that you can see so much of the track and see the cars go perfectly through it. And while it is an American race, it's still, I think, fun to watch in person. And I think the track has been proving itself slowly year by year.
See, I don't recognize tracks when I see them. I don't have that. I don't have all the tracks printed in my head with all the turns.
Mm-hmm.
So I take every race weekend as it comes, and I just enjoy everything around it, and then the racing itself. But I'd love to go to Silverstone because of the history there, and it's pretty much the holy grail of Formula One. Because it's all started there, and how you were talking about how you sometimes see a little bit of a few people with merch walking around in the States. In England, I think 50-60% of the people know pretty much everything there is to know about Formula One. They're obsessed with it. So
yeah, very true. I think that's part of the reason why for Silverstone, definitely.
That's nice too. You can sit in a pub and talk to a complete stranger and discuss everything that has anything to do with Formula One. So
yeah, absolutely. That's another reason why I actually started the channel. There's not many people to talk to about like Formula One here, so it was another reason to kind of get my thoughts out and so on.
Yeah, I get that. So what about this season? Are you enjoying this season?
Oh yeah, I love every season. Even 2023, I loved it. There's something you can enjoy in every single season. For 23, I enjoyed the fight in P2, but I also enjoyed seeing Max do what he did. He was so consistent and so good at it. But for 24, obviously, I'm enjoying this a bit better with Lando now being able to put up a fight. Leclerc, looks like a Mercedes is there. It's much more enjoyable when we can see a more aggressive front to the grid. I do like seeing battling. It is motorsports at the end of the day, so I do want to see drivers compete against each other.
Yeah, no, me too. Obviously.
Yeah.
What I didn't like about the last 2 years is that there's one guy dominating and he gets the blame for the domination. Whereas people should be pointing at Mercedes starting with a concept with sim data that's not correct, then pursuing that because they won a race in Brazil, and then finally hiring the old guy back and making progress. And it's not Red Bull and Max Verstappen's fault that McLaren started so poorly in 2023 with 18th places and DNFs and 6 pit stops in a race. And Ferrari, you can't blame Red Bull for Ferrari's strategy and Sainz and Leclerc going through the gravel and crashing so often as they did.
No, I agree completely.
We have a proper season now after 4 or 5 races of Max winning. And it's all because the competition has caught up. They're doing the job that they should have been doing 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we have a great season.
Agreed. It is crazy that people were blaming Max for winning when that is the goal in the sport. So, and as you also stated, and which is completely correct, and people tend to forget, Mercedes made a huge mistake, and all the teams fell so far behind in 2023. That's why we saw such a dominant season, because they followed the concepts that clearly weren't working in 2022 anyways to catch the competition, and they stuck with that. In 2023, they had to undo all their wrongs. So that's why in 24 we see them much closer now, and Red Bull is kind of hitting that wall when it comes to performance they can get out of a car, and every team has been able to catch up. I remember people speaking about the Ferrari being a little too simple looking for the 2024 season, but they were able to pick up all their wrongdoings and get a car that's overall much better in balance. And in general, the car feels much better for the drivers. While in 23, they had a lot of straight line speed, the car was just pathetic in corners. The Mercedes was the other way around. They were really good in corners, but pathetic in straight line speed. McLaren ended up actually getting the best car, but their car is very similar to the Red Bull. I think it follows a lot of that philosophy, and they've been able to pretty much be like a step behind. If not, honestly, I would argue that the McLaren for the past 4 or 5 races has been the strongest car. It's just been Max making the difference.
Yeah, no, and he's always done that with all the wins that he had, or
Agreed.
in the days before 2021, where he just squeezed wins out of situations where other drivers probably couldn't. So, what was your highlight of the season so far?
I mean, Canada was a great race, definitely. I think seeing Lando win for the first time was really cool. I liked Miami. But I think Canada was the best race so far. Leclerc winning too was cool, but that Monaco race was a snooze. So, I mean,
that was the only highlight of the race, that finally Charles Leclerc won his home race.
Yes, that's the qualifying was good. I did like the 2024 Monaco qualifying, but nothing to 2023 qualifying. No. That's cemented in my brain how good of a qualifying that was.
Well, see, now that you mentioned it, I think Max's P6 time was over a second quicker than his pole time the year before. You probably know that better than me with all your data and stuff.
Yeah.
But it just shows how much Red Bull has progressed, but still not being enough to be the dominant car as they were the year before.
Absolutely. It's because of those marginal gains they can now make. So it's just became closer for that reason. It's also part of the reason for Ferrari finally stepping up. Mercedes still has a little bit to go. They're there, but they're not where Ferrari and McLaren are. I think those are the two most competitive cars. Whether we're going to see the same competition now here in Spain, I'm not sure. But it'll be closer than it was years before, because Max, if he was pushing in 2023 in some of the races, I think he could have won by almost a lap with that car. That car was just so much better in his hands. Checo, no. But in Max's hands, he could have been able to pull off maybe even 50-second victories. He was so good in a car that clearly other drivers cannot drive as well as he can. So, but it's much closer now, and each team has a strength somewhere. Obviously, Red Bull is kind of weak on those curbs as to why Monaco went bad. But then it makes you think, in 2023, if they had that same problem and he still got that pole position with curbs being a problem, it just makes you think this guy's an animal. Like, you got to think back to like what he was able to do. But yeah, the strengths and the weaknesses is what's making this fun and more interesting. Like, I make predictions at the end of my track previews, and it's tough now to make a prediction on who can actually win the race. And I will gladly be wrong if this is what we continue to keep getting. So
no, I hope so too. But that brings us to what was the low point. But I think we already touched on that with the 50 laps snoozing in Monaco.
Yeah, Monaco was. I'm not gonna lie. I was also very underwhelmed by Bahrain because it felt like
a long time ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. But when the race happened and I was watching it, it wasn't that I was mad that Max was winning. I was mad that the teams were so far behind. I was like, are you serious? We're going to get another one of those 2023 seasons where teams just aren't competitive enough. And I did see some potential, so that's why Bahrain is a little bit better than Monaco, but by like this much. They were both, to me, low points in the season.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think what was a low point for me is that what happened at Williams, that they didn't have a spare a chassis, and they had to take Logan's car, because it's such a sympathetic team with such a marvelous team principal in James Vowles, and
agreed.
Logan Sargent's there's no harm in the kid, and Alex Albon is wholesome as well. So for that to happen, that was kind of disappointing. But then I'm reading a lot about the history of Formula One, and crazier stuff happened in the 90s with teams being so poor that they showed up with 4 members of staff to do one lap in pre-qualifying and go home again.
Right. Oh yeah, I mean, Yeah, back in the day when it comes to those cars and those teams like your Lola and so on, those were such different standards of Formula One that it is nowadays with the amount of technology and also the amount of money and the revenue they actually make. They actually make money nowadays in Formula One, where back in the time, if you weren't McLaren, you probably weren't making much profit, or Ferrari for that sake. But it hurt to see Logan not have a car, but I get what Williams is doing, and I think they needed something like this to happen for them to be able to get back to the top. Like, they were very competitive in Canada when they brought an upgrade to the car that's supposedly supposed to put down their weight. So they're moving up. There's more consistent upgrades in the car. As you said, James Vowles, I love him as a team principal. I love that he says when they're at fault, when they could have done better. He's great at picking up on the issues the teams are having, and they had to go through that mess in the summer to maybe now be competitive in the 2026 seasons, especially if the supposed reports of Mercedes having such a great engine becomes true for teams like Williams.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we're going to talk about 2026 a little bit later.
Yep.
So your expectations for the rest of the year is a fight for the win in nearly every race?
For the most part. I do think...
Or do you think there's tracks where Red Bull will still be, a track that suits the Red Bull car perfectly, and they'll walk away with it easily again?
Yeah, I think like a track like Spa, they're going to kill everybody. Yeah. But like Barcelona, it's going to be closer, but I still think that's going to be a Red Bull track. The tracks where it's more flat and they can run a stiffer suspension, they're going to be much better than their competitors. Not by much, though, because teams are still really strong in high speed, and they've had a problem with tire degradation a bit. The Red Bull and McLaren's been a bit better there. I do think this has to be... It's a problem because of the setup, though. It's because they have to run a softer suspension, so that ends up resulting in a little bit more tire wear, where the McLaren's a bit better. But when their suspension's more stiff, we're not going to see the same issue, and we can see Max maybe ride out some laps at a easier pace than just pushing every lap like he has to now. So maybe only like 3 or 4 tracks, the Red Bull will be much stronger. Other than that, though, we should see competition all the time. I do think this stretch of like 3 races in a row, though, Barcelona, Silverstone, and Austria, it's going to be tough to beat Red Bull here. It's going to be tough to beat Max here.
Singapore, that's not going to be Red Bull.
No, I think Singapore is going to be another problem again.
Baku? What about Baku?
Baku, they were still good last year because of straight line speed, but they don't have that same advantage anymore. There are curbs, but it's still a pretty flat track. I think it's going to be close. I think McLaren could maybe edge them there. I think McLaren's got the best car when it comes to overall from race to race, not when it comes to like these races like Bahrain or Jeddah that are very flat and there's not much curbs.
So that brings us to 2025.
Mm-hmm.
Now, usually before we get a new set of regulations, the year before that is always a killer season.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's going to happen in 2025?
Yes. I think we're going to see... I have some feeling that Ferrari is going to be the strongest team in 2025, but I don't think it's going to be Lewis winning. I think it's going to be Leclerc.
So you think Leclerc's going to be world champion?
I do think so, yeah.
Very nice.
I think it's going to be close, though. I have some feeling with Adrian leaving, and as you said, I think Red Bull's having some internal problems. Zach Brown loves to put it out in the media that they are, but I genuinely think they are having some issues before getting into that 2026 season. If they're already getting to that wall, and it seems like Ferrari and McLaren still have more to add, I'm a bit worried to see what they're going to be like next season. And for some reason, I feel like Ferrari's got the momentum. Yes, they had a terrible Canada, but that happens to every single team. So it's not something to just dwell about. Well, what about you? What do you think for 2025? Do you think Max can get it again?
I think it's going to be close.
Mm-hmm.
But Red Bull still has that magnificent strategy team.
Yes, they do.
If at a certain track they say, Max, we're going to do 2-stopper, but you need to drive 130 flat every lap, then he'll do that for 62 laps.
He will, like Mexico.
Yeah, was that race? Was that the race in Mexico where the Mercedes engineer said, "Yeah, we're expecting Max tires to drop off any minute now."
Yeah, and I think I forget if it was soft or mediums, but he rode them for 50 laps at the exact same pace within a 10 time.
Legend has it he did that for 2 weeks until the next race.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, he could have. The way he was going, it was absurd. It was insane.
Yeah, no, that was good. So, but I think if you put Max in a car that's the same speed as Norris's car and Leclerc's car, then Red Bull will get the win through better pit stops, better strategy, and Max overall. And then as for consistency, Max can get second places and wins and third places and fourth places in a bad race and then win the championship because he doesn't always drop off a lot,
No.
So if they keep the reliability all right, because this season he already had one DNF in Australia thanks to reliability issues, then I think Max can be a 5-time world champion.
We can definitely see it, yeah.
But after that, it's going to be really hard, and I'm not sure if he will be at Red Bull in 2026.
You think he's going to leave?
I think he might just leave Formula One altogether. This is what Karun Chandok said.
I heard about this, yeah.
He said that Max might leave and do WEC, and then, see how other teams are doing and then try to get into that best team.
Yeah, it's
everybody will want him anyway,
Yeah, of course. I mean, he is the best driver right now, so yeah, I can see that as a possibility. Maybe I just don't want to believe that he's going to leave in 2026 regardless of the car, because I love seeing a Max charge in the third best car. But yeah, it's possible. I have a feeling Red Bull and their powertrains, I don't know. It's going to be... I'm worried about these 2026 regulations. I'm not going to lie to you. I think with engine changes...
Next subject.
Yeah. With engine changes, it's tough to gauge, what's going to happen.
I haven't thought about it all that much. It's just what I've been hearing about this Frankenstein car with all kinds of... they want to get rid of DRS because it's too much of a gimmick. And... they invent active suspension with all kinds of gimmicks, X and Y,
X and Z mode. Yeah.
X and Z mode. I saw your video today about it.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. I recommend it to everybody. Yeah. So it's even more gimmicky, really. And then the weight only goes down 30 kilos, and it's going to be about this much thinner, the car, and it's going to be about this much shorter. So yeah, basically no difference at all.
Yeah, it's tough because these cars rely so much now on safety, and with the amount of stuff they have to put into the chassis to make it so safe, that's where a lot of the weight comes from. But then when you add this huge battery powered 50/50 engine, so much weight will be added to the car, and yes, the dimensions will be smaller, but as you stated, it'll be this much smaller and this much smaller. So that's not going to shred that much weight. It did do that for the Alfa Romeo in 2022. They made a car that was pretty much this much smaller, but it got them to the weight limit, and that's why they were strong. Regardless, these, as you say, Frankenstein cars, as most people are calling them, it's going to be weird how they can control this car. They went with these regulations, in my opinion at least, they went with these regulations to try and combat the problem of it being a 50/50 engine when it comes to being maybe slower on the straight, but they ended up putting active aero in the rear wing and the front wing to make it faster on the straight. But then that could cause a lot of mechanical problems, which we don't mind to see a DNF or reliability issues. It makes the race interesting, but it won't be interesting if somebody crashes 350 kilometers down a straight. That would be very scary, and that's where I think a lot of these problems come up for me in these new regulations. And then, like we saw in 2014, that Mercedes engine was so much stronger than everybody else's. And I hate seeing an engine battle. I like the aerodynamic battle because then you see the cars visually change and you can see how they take each corner. But if somebody's got a strong engine, that will be the best team.
Yeah, Mercedes went through a corner slower, and then the acceleration was just so much stronger. They just pulled away.
Yeah, it was not even competitive. Like that was the problem that I had. You cannot even catch them. Like even in 2017 and 18, they had the better engine, but their car, because it was slower in corners and Ferrari was close, there were some competitions on each track. But like the Brazil run where it was a sprint race and Lewis started from the back, that engine was so much better than everybody else's. They used that last engine to try and catch Max for the championship. And you can even see like throughout the race, and that's not even a track where I would say that straight line speed is so important like Brazil, but they were able to jet past everybody. So I don't like that because it reminds me of Senna versus Prost too. Like they had the strongest cars by far because their cars, the engine was just so much better than everybody else's. And I'm never a fan of seeing like a car be that much better because of the engine.
But I think the problem starts with F1 trying to do the woke thing by making an engine that is half battery and half what do you call it? Exasperated? No, what's the word?
Naturally aspirated.
Yeah, naturally aspirated. And like the way I think about it, and let me know if you don't agree or what you think of it. Every sport, every kind of recreation is bad for the environment. All over the world, swimming pools are filled up for people to go swimming for fun or for their sport. Ice hockey, ice needs to be frozen. The movie industry, they're blowing up stuff and you name it. People have to travel all over the world. All that's for entertainment and sport. And it's leaving an imprint on the environment. So, people need to look at that. But then in Formula 1, there's only 20 cars on track. All of a sudden, those 20 cars need a battery that is 200, 300 kilos, which I think is ridiculous because with a nice, small, fine-tuned engine with natural, biofuel, I think they can have the same result with much better racing.
Agreed. That's it's pretty much my same opinion on that when it comes to the engine side. Like it's not that much of an impact to the environment that as you said, it's kind of like a woke thing that they're doing because yes, people will look at this and be like, oh, it's great that they're using these electrical engines, but in reality, it doesn't really do that much. And the naturally aspirated engines, if they use that biodegradable fuel, would be much better in, let's say, a V8. If you end up putting it up too much to a V10 or V12, maybe then it would be worse. But a V8 naturally aspirated with some biodegradable fuel would be perfect. And it would bring back a lot of people as well. They want more people to watch the sport. Sound matters a lot. If you don't have this sound, people won't watch it. Like, I've heard people compare what the V8 is and V6 is in person, and it's not even close. So that's a big part of Formula One, having sound. I heard the other day ago in where I'm from, they had hypercars here. They had an IndyCar race here, and hypercars ended up coming out before the IndyCars. Those cars in person, that's how a motorsport car should sound like. Like the Cadillac, to be specific, and the BMW, they sounded amazing. And I'm pretty sure they have V8s in those cars. But they just sound ridiculous. And you can not only hear that speed, because of the sound, it even looks faster. Yeah. So that's another thing for Formula cars. If they have the sound, they will look even faster, and they will sound much better. So, and as you said, it's a very little thing they're doing for the environment. The biggest thing they need to change is
I also think it has something to do with manufacturers want to sell road cars with the technology in it, and that's how they can justify the budget for Formula One.
That's true too. Yeah,
but
definitely plays a part.
I think if Alpine had a nice, quick V8 engine and they were scoring more than 3 points so far, that would be much better advertising for their Alpine sports cars than what they're showing now.
Agreed.
And
Agreed.
it's the same for Ferrari, and Mercedes. Like teams that get podiums, they get much better publicity than a team that's not performing at all. And at the end of the day, people don't care about the engine that's in it. That's something that the board tells the board of the Formula One.
Right. No, yeah, it's true. Like, especially with it being Ferrari, that Formula car should have a better engine than a V6. There's very little Ferraris that have a V6 in their car. So for Ferrari's case, definitely makes no sense for the whole entire V6 engine. Same with Aston Martin. Those are cars that have always had V12s, and Aston Martin even came out with a news article and statement saying they're still going to make V12s when no other teams or no other manufacturers, like in the driving market, are going to make V12s. So I like that statement by them because that'll make them unique yet again. For that, Ferrari, I think, is sticking now more to V8. They still will make V12 engines, but you can see even them going more electrical. So I think I also have been reading with these 2026 regulations that we could only have them for 4 years, and in 2030 they're going to change back to hopefully what we've been talking about, that V8 biodegradable engine. And I hope that's the case. Or they just push back these regulations completely. We have super competitive racing within these next 5 or 6 years. That'd be even better.
Yeah.
But that's not going to happen.
No. Let's hope it happens.
I hope so.
So you definitely think that Mercedes is going to come out strong in 2026 because they built such a good car or engine in 2014?
They have a really strong team in the engine building department, so that makes me think that they've been very confident with what they're saying. Audi, it's going to be tough to gauge. I do think Honda with Aston Martin can also be really, really strong. I still have my doubts on Red Bull and Ford, what they're able to pull off, because it's going to be very new to them, even though they have worked with Honda. Mm-hmm. It's a big step to take to make a whole entire engine and continuously upgrade it. So it's tough, but I do think Mercedes seems to have the most confidence, and they keep pushing for these engine regulations. They're pushing so hard for this because they're behind right now, and that makes me think that they want this. So yeah. I do think they will be strongest.
So, if F1 started thinking about maybe postponing the new regulations, then Mercedes Toto Wolff will block that.
I do think so. I mean, I hope that that's not the only influence for it, because it seems like all the drivers are against it. Lewis has even stated something against it. Now, that might be because of his move going to Ferrari, so now he doesn't really care for Mercedes. But I did read somewhere that Toto did say something about they need to change some certain things. It seems like every team principal doesn't really agree on the active aerodynamics. I think that's where the confusion is happening. I think the engine part, nobody's really saying much, unfortunately. But in the way that the car is built and how it's supposed to work, that's where most teams are saying this is not the way to go.
We're just going to have to wait and see.
Yeah.
We've been talking for an hour and 15 minutes already. It's a good chat.
It's been an enjoyable talk, man.
So let's go back to your channel again. For the people that are watching this, where can we find you?
Well, right now on YouTube, it's going to be F1 Unchained. Just search.
I saw you on TikTok as well, but you only had 28 followers.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to get back into shorts a bit. It's tough to do long form content and short form content, but yes, you could find me F1 Unchained on TikTok, YouTube. I'm on Instagram as well, and on X. It's all the same at.
Do you have memberships?
I do have memberships. Yeah, it's something, if you guys want to sign up, I would really appreciate it, and it would help me a lot. So to anybody,
do you make special content for it, or do you just release things earlier?
I release things earlier on it too, because most of my videos are scheduled, so it'll come out maybe 10 or 11 hours before the actual scheduled date. But I'm not making anything in particular for it because I just can't get to it with the way that I'm making these videos. It takes up a lot of time, but I do plan on in the future doing something more for it.
Okay, and no Patreons or
not yet.
Buy me a coffee and all that stuff?
No, maybe in the future.
Yeah. Newsletter? the F1 Unchained newsletter?
I mean, I'm making some clothing right now, so that's.
Oh yeah, that's another question. Do you have merchandise?
I'm making it right now. I've actually spoken to my members, and they've given their opinion on it as well. So,
well, I guarantee you that I will buy a T-shirt that I will wear on live streams and sometimes on a video, because that's what I do for people that I podcast with.
Thank you, man.
I buy their merch and then I promote it a little bit.
No, I'll even give it to you for free, man. I just want to send it out and see what you think.
No, not for free. I mean, you're doing this podcast for free.
Yeah,
right?
Of course, man. I've had an awesome time, so.
You're not sending me a bill later, are you?
No invoice coming.
Hey, okay, well, let's close this off with some wild predictions for this season.
Okay.
Have you thought about it?
A little bit. When you sent me over the thing, I was like, okay, what can I think about? Here's my very wild prediction. I think Lewis is going to win in Singapore.
Wow! He's going to be the first driver to break the 300 race curse. Have you heard about that?
I actually... What, every driver that has had over 300 races hasn't won?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, he'll break it.
Jenson Button, Alonso, Kimi Raikkonen, Barrichello, Lewis Hamilton. I think there's 6 of them. I think I'm missing one. They all had more than 300 races and never won after their 300.
Oh, wow.
So that would be amazing.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen. I think after the crazy year he's having, he's going to get a win. I think after 2 years of not getting a win, it's happening. And I think Singapore, for the reason being, I think the car by then they'll all be pretty much, the top 4 will be right there. I hope Aston can be within that top 5, but I'm not going to promise anything. What about you, man?
See, I've sent you all these questions and I haven't thought about it myself. I'm going to say that Kimi Antonelli is going to do a free practice this season.
Oh, I mean,
that's not that wild, is it? No.
But did you see what just came out like today about the whole entire super license with the 17-year-old? So he's definitely going to be put in for a free practice. Yeah. Maybe even put into the seat by the end of the year or something. I don't know. We'll have to see him.
That would be a wild prediction. You know, Lewis Hamilton is going to be dropped 2 races before the end, and Kimi Antonelli is going to take his seat.
Oh, dude, there would be riots everywhere if that happened. But that would be.
No,
I mean, if you're Mercedes,
we want to see Mercedes donuts for Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, he's got to go out on like a nice ending for probably one of the best like stints ever in a team. So
yeah.
Even with the unfortunate 22 and 23 seasons, but yeah.
It happens.
Oh, yeah, to every driver. I mean, like, naturally, it's going to happen in the sport. The teams that dominate are going to fall. It's going to happen to Red Bull at some point, too. Even though I do believe that is the best team. I think that 2023 team is probably the best Formula One team ever. Like, that set of people.
Everything was still hunky-dory then.
Yeah.
Or so it seemed.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, in the background, all these things were already playing.
Yeah.
But let's not end on that note. Mickey, thank you very much for doing this podcast. And everybody, please subscribe to F1 Unchained. I'll leave the link in the description. And for people that are watching this podcast through F1 Unchained, please subscribe to my channel.
Go ahead and
really
give them a subscription.
I'd love to get to 2,000 subscribers before the end of the month.
Hopefully we can bring you up to then. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, but we'll keep in contact. You can always send me a DM in Twitter.
Yeah, of course, man.
We can chat a little bit about YouTube and stuff.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody, take care now.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Peace.